The first signal of leaving an old timeline always appears in a moment so small that if you lack sensitivity, you will miss it as if it never happened. There is no strange light, no clear event, no metaphysical sign that startles you. There is only a slight distortion that is hard to describe, almost soundless, yet enough to make you pause in the middle of an ordinary day. That moment feels like standing in a familiar room, but the experience no longer matches the memory you have of that very place. A corner of light shifts in color very subtly. A familiar object appears slightly different, not because it has changed, but because you are no longer looking at it from the old layer of awareness. This is the first signal, and it never appears when you try to find it. It appears when your inner structure has reached a point where it can no longer continue living inside the old framework. This signal does not come from the outside. It is the faint vibration of the field within you when the old identity can no longer hold the central position. You feel as if you are standing in the same life, but you no longer fully belong to it. It is not that you want to leave. It is that you have already left without having the words for it. This distortion is the beginning of every awakening. When it appears, your body notices before your mind. A breath becomes heavier or lighter in a way you cannot explain. A heartbeat slows down, then becomes clearer. A thin layer of stillness covers everything around you. All of these are the language of the field sending you the message that you have begun to shift. What confuses many people is that this signal is not dramatic. It is so quiet that you may think it is a moment of unexplained sadness or ordinary fatigue. But if you pay attention, you will notice a subtle difference. Conversations that once excited you now feel dull. Roles that once made you feel safe now feel tight. Habits that once helped you survive now no longer fit. This slight distortion is the indicator that the old identity is losing control and your new identity is beginning to broadcast its first signal. This is not a crisis. This is a process of energetic repositioning. When the old timeline is no longer compatible with who you are becoming, the field adjusts by creating a sense of unfamiliarity with what used to be familiar. It is not the world that is changing, but you standing in a frequency that no longer matches the environment used to fit in. Every discomfort in this phase is information. It does not appear to make you doubt yourself, but to remind you that you cannot continue walking into the future with the old version of who you used to be. Some people resist this signal by clinging to what is familiar. They become more busy, try to do everything the same way, try to convince themselves that nothing is happening. But this distortion does not disappear when denied. It only turns into emptiness or confusion, forcing you to look at what you have known all along. You have begun to leave the old timeline, and this process cannot be reversed. You do not need to understand everything at this moment. What you need is to pause long enough to realize that this strange feeling is not a sign of a mistake, but the first authentic signal that you are being called into another layer of reality. When you begin to accept this slight distortion, the field will open new pockets of stillness for you. These pockets of stillness used to frighten you because they made you feel like you lacked answers, but it is within these pockets that you will hear what the old timeline always kept you distracted from seeing. The first signal does not come to create panic, it comes to place you back into the right position in your own journey. It reminds you that your deeper self has grown to a point where stretching the old version any further no longer serves you. And when you dare to look at that signal without denying it, without running from it, without trying to return to the comfort of what you used to know, you step into the layer of consciousness where new choices begin to form. You stand at the rare moment where the field calls your name through a very small vibration, yet one strong enough to change the entire trajectory of your life. What matters is that you recognize it and allow yourself to move forward. This shift is real, and it has already begun within you. When the field calls your name, The first thing you feel is not a clear calling, but a silent shift happening inside your awareness. It does not resemble a metaphysical message. It does not resemble the miraculous sign you have been waiting for. It is only a very small change in the way you perceive yourself. You stand in the middle of an ordinary day, but the familiar feeling of life suddenly has a small gap. You look at someone who once felt very close and realize you no longer want to stay in that frequency. You hear a conversation that you could once join for hours, but now it feels no longer aligned. You walk into places that once felt like home, but something in you no longer wants to remain there. This moment does not come from impulse. It comes from inner ripeness. This ripeness is not loud. It does not require you to understand. It simply creates a small internal distortion that makes everything that used to be normal suddenly feel different. This is the invisible summons, when the field informs you that a cycle has ended and you are entering a new layer of awareness, even if your rational mind has not caught up. This summons often appears when you believe you are fine, when nothing significant has changed in your outer life, when everything is calm enough that you do not suspect anything. But at that exact moment, your inner world reaches saturation and the field begins to activate the transition. You feel as if you no longer completely belong to what you once tried so hard to maintain. Not because you dislike it, but because you have grown beyond that shape without noticing. The field does not call your name with words. The field calls you through the quiet discomfort that slips into what used to be familiar, through the soft separation from people who once felt close, through the disappearance of the sense of alignment with roles you once treated as identity. There is nothing wrong with you. This is a sign of maturity. When your soul reaches a new frequency, every structure that is no longer compatible will begin to reveal itself as feelings of dislocation, confusion, distance, or simply a silence you cannot explain. There is a strange kind of loneliness that appears in this phase. Not because you are being left behind, but because you are stepping into a wavelength the old people can no longer hear. And in this phase, you begin to notice that the things that once excited you can no longer hold you. Old conversations fade. Old goals no longer pull you the way they used to. Relationships built on roles instead of truth begin to wobble. What matters is that you do not need to understand why. The invisible summons does not ask for analysis. It asks for listening. When the field calls, the only thing you need is honesty with yourself. Honesty that you have changed. Honesty that what was true for an old version is no longer true for you now. Honesty that you cannot continue living as if you are still in the old layer of awareness while your soul is pulling you elsewhere. This summons does not come to destroy your life. It comes to detach you from what has already fulfilled its role. Old seasons of life cannot hold you forever because the soul is not designed to remain still in one version. Transformation is your natural essence. And the field is only adjusting to bring you back to the central axis of your journey. When the summons appears, you will find yourself craving the stillness you once avoided. You want to move away from noise, from old loops, from people who make you shrink, from things that drain your energy. You begin to see the value of emptiness. You realize stillness is not as frightening as you once thought. It is where you hear your signal the clearest. The invisible summons also has a clear expression in the way you react to pain. Old wounds that once broke you now only make you pause and breathe. You no longer want to fight the past because you feel yourself moving away from it. You no longer want to prove anything. You no longer want to convince anyone. You no longer want to compete for a place in spaces where your soul no longer belongs. This is how the field announces that you are entering the phase of ego restructuring. You do not need to chase anything. You do not need to hold on to anyone. The summons does not call you through urgency, it calls you through precision, it calls you through the expanding stillness within you. It calls you through the sense that a new page is opening, even if you cannot see the words. It calls you through a question rising from the deepest place inside you. Do I still belong to this life in the old way? When this question appears, that is the moment you have crossed a boundary your rational mind has not yet recognized. You think you are confused, but you are actually opening. You think you are lost, but you are actually leaving the old map. You think you have no energy, but in truth, you are no longer allowing yourself to waste it on values that contradict your soul. The invisible summons is the confirmation that you have outgrown the version that once saved you in old stages. And when the field calls, the only choice is not to stay or go, but to be truthful with yourself, with your real needs, with your real frequency, with the direction unfolding, even if you cannot see it clearly. The field never calls the wrong person. When the summons appears in your life, it means you are ready for a new trajectory that you do not need to earn. You only need to allow yourself to hear it. And when you listen, you will realize the transformation began long ago. You have only just become quiet enough to feel it. The old ego does not collapse in a sudden moment. It dissolves slowly through small signs you often overlook. Signs showing that the structure that once helped you survive no longer fits the frequency your soul is opening into. Life does not need a major event to signal this collapse. It begins with a fatigue you cannot explain when trying to keep everything the same. It begins with discomfort toward yourself when repeating reactions, are outdated. It begins with the realization that you can no longer pretend old relationships are truly nourishing you. The old ego is the version built from the moments you needed safety more than truth. It is the version that knows how to please in order to avoid being hurt. The version that knows how to stay quiet to keep peace. The version that shrinks itself so as not to bother anyone. The version that trades honesty to maintain a place in someone else's life. These strategies were once the armor that saved you, but when you begin to grow beyond your fear, the armor becomes chains. That is when the old ego begins to collapse, not because it is bad, but because it has completed its job. This collapse happens in very human moments. You feel irritated when someone crosses a boundary, but you still say nothing. You blame yourself for a small action, but feel as if you are betraying something deeper. You hear a comment that you could once laugh off, but this time it leaves a sharp cut. You realize you no longer want to force yourself to fit the image others expect. The old ego collapses when you can no longer betray yourself one more time without feeling pain. This is not a sign of weakness, this is the return of honesty. When the old ego falls away, you start seeing what has always been there, but you are not clear enough to notice. The words you once said to please someone sound like the echo of a stranger. The compromises you once considered normal suddenly feel heavy. The expectations you once chased to prove your value now look like a mold too small for your soul to fit. The old ego collapses when you can no longer force yourself into an outdated version without feeling a break. A very small but unmistakable break deep in the place where you can no longer pretend nothing is happening. What matters in this phase is kindness toward yourself. You do not need to fight the old ego, you only need to see it for what it is. It is not the enemy. It is the product of years spent living in environments that were not safe enough for you to be yourself. It is a survival strategy, not a flaw. When you see this clearly, you can let it dissolve without falling into cycles of self-blame. This dissolution shows up as a very strange sadness. A sadness not directed at anyone else, but at the version you had to become in order to adapt. Maybe you have never allowed yourself to feel compassion for that version, but when you begin to, you free yourself. This liberation does not make you cold or indifferent. It makes you more honest. You begin to speak less, but more clearly. You react more slowly, but more truthfully. You pull your energy away from spaces that are no longer authentic and direct it toward what nourishes you. You no longer need noise to prove your transformation. The transformation lies in the fact that you no longer betray yourself in even the smallest decisions. When you meet the old ego in this phase, what surprises you is not the fear. It is the realization that you have outgrown it. You see clearly the patterns that once controlled you. You look at them with the eyes of someone who has awakened from an old dream. You do not need to hate the old ego. You only need to stop identifying with it. This is the strongest sign that you are shifting timelines. What you feel now is the separation between layers, between who you used to be and who you are becoming, between old reflexes and new awareness, between choices made from fear and choices made from honesty. This is the phase where you must face an important question, a question only a conscious soul dares to answer. Are you still willing to live the old life when you know it has expired? If the answer is no, you are ready for the next part of the journey. If the answer is yes, the truth within you will continue knocking until you face it. At this moment, if you clearly feel the collapse of the old ego, if you know you can no longer shrink yourself to fit what once felt familiar, if you are standing in the middle of this dissolution, feeling both pain and relief, let me know you are ready to move forward. Comment ready or the number 1 below this, because if you can feel this, your journey has truly begun. The darkness of a soul night is not a punishment or a sign that you are going the wrong way. It is the doorway that opens when you have matured enough to step into a deeper layer of yourself. Darkness does not come to pull you down, but to dismantle the outdated parts within your human structure. It strips away the artificial layers you wore to survive. It forces you to face the truest part of yourself, the part you once avoided, because it demands absolute honesty. When you enter that dark night, the outer life may continue normally, but inside you everything has left its old position. You feel empty, even though you have not lost anything. You feel tired, even though you have done nothing. You feel as if an inner door has closed and you do not know when you walk through it. This is not confusion. This is the separation between two versions of you. The old version is falling away and the new version has not yet formed, leaving an empty space in between. That space is where darkness appears. The darkness in this stage is not the darkness of fear, but the darkness of invitation. It invites you to look at what you pushed into shadows, invites you to see the pains that were never named, invites you to face what you buried beneath layers of artificial calm. And in that darkness, you realize that some pain did not come from others, but from the many times you rejected yourself. Some wounds did not come from circumstances, but from repeatedly accepting less than what you truly needed. What drains you is not life. What drains you is living as a version that has expired. Darkness appears so you can no longer pretend everything is fine. It turns off all external noise so you can hear the inner signal clearly. It removes the false light so you can see the real light lying deep within your core. When darkness covers you, you feel a very real solitude. Not because no one is there, but because you no longer belong to the layers you once knew. You can no longer rely on old logic or old survival strategies. Darkness forces you to look at yourself without any cushioning to reduce the pain. This is why many people fear inner darkness. It does not compromise, it does not negotiate, it does not let you run, it stands you face to face with the truth. But within that truth, you discover something outer light can never give you. You see clearly what in your life is real and what is only habit. You see clearly who loves you for you and who loves you for your role. You see clearly what within you wants to live and what is dying because it has been suppressed for too long. Darkness is the space where all shells fall away, revealing an essence you can no longer pretend about. Some people think they are breaking in this stage, but the truth is they are opening away from false beliefs, opening away from old patterns, opening away from expectations they once forced themselves to meet, opening away from the self-image others placed on them. And as those things fall away, you feel empty. But this emptiness is not loss, it is space for the new to enter. Darkness is the stage where you no longer know who you are. Not because you are lost, but because you cannot return to the old and have not yet become the new. This is the most delicate moment in rebirth. Many think they are going backward, but in the darkness, your awareness is restructuring. You begin asking questions you once feared, thinking about what in this life truly holds meaning for me. What am I doing out of freedom? And what am I doing out of fear of being left behind? What am I trying to prove and to whom? These questions do not come to make you doubt, but to bring you back to the correct axis. The axis of truth, the axis of soul, the axis of essence. When the darkness lasts, you may think you are stuck. But the essence of a dark night is not stagnation. It is transformation happening in silence. Just like a seed underground, no one sees it crack open, but in that darkness, new life is forming. What makes the dark night a sacred ritual is that it forces you to lay down everything that no longer belongs to you. You cannot carry old voices into a new timeline. You cannot carry old compromises into a new layer of awareness. You cannot carry pretending into a place where you are being called back to truth. Darkness in its deepest nature is the hallway between what has died and what is being born. You cannot see the end point, but you can feel a certainty beneath the chaos. It is the certainty of the soul guiding you. The certainty that you cannot go back, the certainty that a new shape is forming even if you cannot see it yet. When you can stay in the darkness without forcing yourself to shine immediately, something very important happens. You begin to hear the truest voice inside you. Not the voice of fear, not the voice of expectation, not the voice of others, but the voice of the part of you that has been waiting for you for a very long time. And it is that voice that will guide your next steps. Darkness is not the end. Darkness is the doorway. And when you walk through it, you will no longer be the version that seeks the light. You become the one who generates it. The collapse of the old human structure is not the moment you are defeated, but the moment the pieces that once kept you alive begin to fall away because they no longer align with your new frequency. This is not weakening, this is dismantling. The old self was built from the beliefs you once needed in order to survive, the fears you once treated as truth, the roles you forced yourself to play to be accepted, and the limitations you believed were safe. When you enter this stage, you are not losing control, you are losing constraints. And that always feels like everything is collapsing. You feel you no longer recognize yourself. The things that once defined, you feel distant. The habits that once gave you safety feel heavy. The expectations that once guided you suddenly hold no meaning. Many people mistake this shift for a downfall or failure, but at its core, it is cleansing. Because to step into a new layer of awareness, the old self cannot come with you. That structure was built for who you used to be, and when the soul expands, that structure becomes too tight. The collapse of the old structure does not happen in a single major event. It happens in small moments when you realize you can no longer tolerate what once felt familiar, when relationships that once felt close begin to feel distorted, when jobs that once felt stable become suffocating, when the stories you told about yourself begin to feel untrue. The first crack usually comes from within. A strange feeling as if you are living inside a skin that no longer fits, a kind of inner itch that makes it impossible to keep pretending. You look at yourself and know something has moved out of its whole place, and even if you try to cling to what is familiar, it can no longer hold you. That is the earliest sign that the old structure is dissolving. Old protection mechanisms also begin to shake. You can no longer fool yourself with excuses. You can no longer use work or relationships to cover your inner instability. You can no longer use a smile to hide exhaustion. You can no longer project strength to hide the hurt. Every defense begins to crack, and in that cracking, you are forced to look directly at what is real. This collapse is an inner ritual, where you are guided back into the root room of your soul and asked to examine each brick that built your identity. Some bricks you will keep, some you will realize were never yours. Some have rotted, though you clung to them because they once helped you survive. When you begin removing these bricks, everything becomes unstable. You do not know where you are going. You do not know who you are becoming. You do not know what will remain once the old shell disappears. But this instability is exactly the space where your true self emerges. The collapse of the old ego always comes with disorientation. You look in the mirror and cannot find the familiar image. You speak to others and feel like you are hearing a stranger using your voice. You stand in places that were once familiar but feel like you are standing on the edge of your own life. This is not a sign that you are losing yourself, but that you are breaking free from the version shaped by environment, expectations, and personal history. As the old structure falls away, you begin to clearly feel the parts you once abandoned. Old desires you silenced, small joys you dismissed, truths you feared saying, boundaries you erased. Emotions long suppressed begin rising, not to punish you, but to return you to yourself. The pain in this stage is not the pain of loss, but the pain of release. Like muscles that have been tight for years suddenly being unlocked, the first sensation is always sharp, but after that comes relief. Likewise, the breaking down of the old ego hurts because you are touching parts of yourself you buried for so long. You may feel tired, tearful, easily irritated, easily tense, not because you are weaker, but because you are feeling again the emotions you numbed in order to survive. This is how the old structure exits. For the process to continue, you must allow yourself to pause and listen. Listen to what your body is signaling. Listen to where your soul is pulling you. Listen to what your intuition is whispering. The old structure will do everything it can to pull you back because it was designed to keep you safe in the old way. It will make you doubt, make you reach for old relationships, make you want to return to old jobs, make you want to crawl back into familiar spaces. But that resistance is the proof that you are truly shifting. A new structure is forming, a new self is rising, a wider, truer, stronger version is emerging beneath the debris. The collapse of the old structure is not an ending. It is the preparation space for new construction. It is not a symbol of failure, but evidence that you have outgrown the story that once defined you. The most important thing in this stage is not mistaking the breaking for the end. What is cracking is not you. It is the shell that kept you small. You are not losing yourself. You are shedding what is no longer you. In the moment you realize this, the collapse becomes liberation. You breathe deeper. You stand taller. And you begin stepping into life as someone being remade, because the old structure has fallen and what is rising is you in your truest form. Frequency recalibration does not happen through a grand ritual or a metaphysical event. It happens through very subtle codes that the field sends into your awareness bit by bit until your entire energetic structure is aligned back to its true axis. The recalibration codes are not knowledge you memorize, but a sequence of signals you absorb when your inner being becomes clear enough to recognize that you've drifted from your original path. When the collapse of the old self occurs, an empty space opens inside you. That very space allows the recalibration codes to operate. No one enters a new life through panic, only through the purity of a frequency that has been rearranged. The first recalibration code is silence. Not the silence of avoidance, but the silence of rebalancing. You stop trying to explain everything. Stop trying to analyze why you feel misaligned. Stop trying to cling to logic to hold yourself in a safe zone. When you allow silence, the field can finally deliver signals without interference from old thoughts. Silence is the door-opening code. The second code is sensing the body in the most honest way. No analysis, no reasoning, only feeling. When you are near something wrong, the body contracts very slightly. When you are near something right, the breath opens even before you make a decision. The field always sends signals through the body before the mind. When you start listening to your body as a true map, you are beginning to recalibrate your frequency. The third code is inner honesty. Not honesty with others, honesty with yourself. Honesty about fear, honesty about desire, honesty about what you know has ended, even if you've not yet dared to accept it. Every new frequency requires you to become transparent with yourself. If truth is concealed, the field cannot synchronize with you. The fourth code is reclaiming energy from leaking points. This is when you begin to notice where your energy has been lost, even though you once assumed it was normal. Conversations that drain you, relationships in which you must perform, work that makes you shrink, roles you force yourself into to be loved. When you withdraw energy from these places, you are sending a very clear signal into the field that your frequency is changing direction. The fifth code is inner stability. Not stability in circumstances, but stability in how you stand before yourself. You no longer react as intensely as before. You no longer run away from emotions. You no longer fear your inner darkness. You begin looking at the truth without panic. This is the state that allows deeper codes to download into you smoothly. The sixth code is the rearrangement of priorities. You begin knowing what is truly important, what is mere noise, what is only a habit of the old self. Things that once stressed you lose value. Things that once made you abandon yourself become unacceptable. You are not trying to change. You simply cannot continue living out of alignment with your frequency. That is the recalibration code in motion. The seventh code is small but consistent choices. Not big decisions, not dramatic leaps, only small daily movements that match your true being. Standing up when your body says stop, saying no when you can no longer endure, speaking your real feeling instead of pleasing. Every small action is a code being activated. The eighth code is inner clearing, not erasing memories, not denying the past, but acknowledging what has expired in your life. When you clear old emotions you once locked away, the field recognizes that you are creating space for a new frequency. The ninth code is trusting your own rhythm, not running at someone else's pace, not comparing your progress to others. When you end comparison, you end frequency distortion. This is the code the field uses to recognize that you are standing in your own flow. The 10th code is reconnecting with intuition, not vague intuition, but a knowing that is clear in your bones. When you listen to the voice inside without betraying it, you synchronize with the field in a profound way. The 11th code is readiness for a new order. Not readiness in the mind, but readiness in frequency. An inner state where you no longer resist what is coming. You no longer try to keep the old story intact. You begin opening to what you cannot yet see. The 12th code is the harmony between awareness and action. When you act in alignment with the new frequency, the field begins responding quickly. Synchronistic events increase. Unexpected doors open. The right people appear. Coincidences become so precise that you can no longer dismiss them as random. This is when you know the recalibration system is fully activated. When you move through this entire process, you do not become a new person. You become the true version you lost when you had to live inside the old structure. And the most profound part is that when your frequency stabilizes, the field no longer has to send signals to pull you back. The field begins to operate through you. This is the point where your life shifts into the trajectory you were born to walk. You are ready for the next chapter. Noise does not only come from the outer world, it comes from subtle layers of interference slipping into your awareness every day and pulling you away from your true trajectory. When you compare yourself to others, when you fear missing out, when you let the words of others become law, you do not only lose focus, you lose the frequency that was meant to shape your life. Comparison is not a harmless habit. It is the ritual that pulls you out of your own timeline. Every time you look at someone else's journey and conclude that you are slower, lesser, or late, you are stepping away from the convergence point the field designed for you. No one has the same soul data. No one carries the same wounds, the same lessons, or the same codes that you do. Therefore, every comparison is inaccurate from the root. It makes you reject your own rhythm and attempt to live through someone else's frequency. Comparison is a form of self-betrayal, not because you are jealous, but because you no longer trust your own path. Meanwhile, what you think others have is not their destination, but the alignment between their frequency and their actions. You see the results, but you do not see the inner structure that created them. You look at their success and forget that the field never gave you the same map. When you detach from comparison, you return to the quiet place where only one question matters: does this match my frequency? FOMO is another subtle form of interference. The fear of missing out makes you chase every signal except your own. It creates the illusion that everyone is moving faster than you and that you must run to avoid being left behind, but running at someone else's pace is running away from yourself. Decisions made from FOMO do not come from inner direction, but from panic. And when you act from panic, every frequency you emit becomes distorted. The field cannot synchronize with a distorted frequency. It only responds when you stand in your true rhythm. Every time you chase something you were not called to, you lose what is actually calling you. FOMO makes you believe that scarcity is approaching, when in truth you are simply drifting away from the frequency that leads you to abundance. The voices of others are the strongest form of noise, not because they are stronger than you, but because you once believed their authority was worthy of replacing the authority of your inner self. When you allow someone's words to make you change direction, you hand over the decision of your timeline to an opinion that holds none of your soul data. No one but you knows the path you were designed to walk. No one but you can feel the vibration of the right choice. When the voices of others become the dominant noise, you turn yourself into a programmed version without awareness. Some advice is helpful, but some words are reflections of their fear, their limits, and their wounds. If you do not filter them through your own frequency, you absorb data that does not belong to you. Clearing the noise is not about blocking your ears. It is the art of filtration. It is the ability to stand firm in your inner truth, so the noise no longer penetrates you. The first step to detach from interference is realizing that you do not have to process everything that enters your life. Not every opinion is worth hearing. Not every signal is meant for you. Not every invitation is worth entering. When you know what belongs to you and what does not, you instantly cut away 70% of the noise invading your awareness. The next step is keeping a fixed pocket of stillness in your day. Just a few minutes away from screens, away from information, away from expectations. Not to hide, but to reset your frequency. In that stillness, you ask only two things: what is making me noisy? And what part of me believes that noise? Interference always comes from outside, but the attachment to interference comes from within. When you see where you cling to the noise, the knot dissolves instantly. Clearing the noise is also recognizing where you are living for the gaze of others. When you post something to be praised, when you choose a direction to be accepted, when you suppress a part of yourself to avoid judgment, all of these actions are subtle versions of giving your frequency to others to operate. And when others control your frequency, you cannot hear the signal of the field. The most important thing is learning to see noise as context, not as a compass. You see it, but you do not follow it. You notice it, but you do not let it lead you. When you live according to your true frequency, you will feel a strange lightness. You stop running, stop comparing, stop trying to match anyone's rhythm. You step into your correct inner position, and from there, the field begins to do the part of the field. Clearing the noise is not just a skill, it is a state of living, where you choose clarity over chaos, truth over noise, your own rhythm over the rhythm of the crowd. If you feel this section hitting you in a very clear way, leave a like as a quiet affirmation that you are returning to your own axis. Even a very small gesture is a frequency choice, and it is the small choices that determine the timeline you enter. Energy sovereignty is not an abstract idea or a distant spiritual theory. It is the foundation that determines whether you live as an awakened being or as someone constantly pulled by the needs, emotions, and demands of others. Every person you meet carries an energy field. Every conversation, every message, every expectation touches your field with a different intensity. When you have no boundaries, you are not living by your own frequency. You are living by the oscillation of others. You react instead of choose. You absorb instead of discern. You lose sovereignty without knowing when you dropped it. Energy sovereignty begins with one simple truth. You were not born to be the container for anyone's emotions. Some people need your stability. Some need your attention. Some need your comfort. Some need you to carry the things they refuse to face. If you have no boundaries, you become the emotional buffer for them. And when you become a buffer, you are no longer yourself. You become a version disconnected from your own center. The clearest sign of losing energy sovereignty is when you leave a meeting and the other person's emotions are still running inside you long after they have gone. When you hear a sentence that follows you for days. When someone else's insecurity becomes your insecurity. When you feel exhausted even though you did nothing heavy. This is proof that your boundaries are being penetrated. This penetration does not happen because you are weak. It happens because you confuse unconditional openness with self-destruction. You think openness means letting everything in. You think love means constant sacrifice. You think kindness means never disappointing anyone. But every time you let someone enter your field without discernment, you step away from your own axis. Boundaries are not rigidity. Boundaries are the cleanliness of your field. Boundaries are not walls. Boundaries are honesty. Boundaries are not resistance to others. Boundaries are the protection of your inner truth. When boundaries are clear, you do not become cold. You become luminous. You do not create distance out of dislike. You create distance to maintain the purity of your frequency. True boundaries do not come from anger. They come from precise recognition. This is not mine. This makes me misaligned. This makes me shrink. This distorts my field. One of the most important rules of energy sovereignty is that you are under no obligation to remain where your soul has already left. Any relationship that requires you to extinguish yourself to maintain it is no longer a connection. It is an old contract waiting for you to step out of. Any job that makes you lose the voice inside is no longer a path, is an old structure waiting for you to stop. Any conversation that leaves you in prolonged confusion is not an exchange. It is an energy leak you must close. When you build boundaries, you are not keeping others away. You are keeping yourself close to intuition, close to truth, close to the axis of your own frequency. You begin to see this clearly when the shift happens in small but deep ways. You speak less but clearer. You give less but deeper. You appear less but more accurately. The inner space becomes so transparent that you can feel the vibration of others immediately and know what should enter and what should stop at the door. A crucial part of energy sovereignty is learning not to lead with guilt. Guilt makes you say yes when you want to say no. makes you stay silent when you need to speak, makes you explain when you do not owe anyone an explanation, makes you prolong bonds that have already expired. But when you distinguish true love from guilt, your boundaries naturally become sharp. True love does not require you to break yourself. True love does not require you to carry responsibilities that are not yours. True love does not require you to endure to prove your worth. Any request that makes you shrink is a sign you need to close the entrance to your field. Once you reclaim energy sovereignty, the first thing that changes is not other people. It is your inner rhythm. You no longer fear being misunderstood. You no longer worry about disappointing others. You no longer drain energy monitoring everyone's emotions. You no longer live as an antenna, absorbing every signal. You live as a source. This is the switching point of energy sovereignty. When you emit a clear frequency, those who are not on your wavelength cannot latch onto you anymore. Not because you avoid them, but because they cannot hook into your field. You become smooth to energies that once clung to you. You become bright enough that dark spaces cannot stay long. And when the field is clean, your life changes without effort. People who respect boundaries appear. Opportunities aligned with your essence appear. Connections become fewer but real. Conversations become deep but light. Steps become small but true. Energy sovereignty is not a wall you build to protect yourself from the world. It is the way you walk into the world as a soul no longer pulled back to an old map. It is the way you live without handing over the reins of your frequency to anyone else. It is the way you maintain your light without having to fight. When you stand in your energy sovereignty, the field does not only hear you, the field walks with you. And from that moment, your life begins to operate according to the vibration you were born to carry. Trust in yourself does not disappear in one night. It erodes slowly through every moment when you feel an inner signal but choose to ignore it to please someone, to keep peace, to avoid trouble, or to maintain an old version of yourself that has expired. Every time you hear the whisper of intuition and turn away, a small crack forms. Every time you know the right thing but choose the familiar thing, the structure of trust shifts slightly out of place. Until one day you look at yourself and you are no longer sure whether you can trust your own choices. This fracture is not because you are weak. It is the natural result of living too long in an environment where your inner voice was dismissed. You were taught that others know better, that organizations, family, community, friends, or people you once loved have the authority to tell you what you should do. Sometimes you were rewarded for obedience, not for honesty with your essence. Gradually, you forgot that in every situation, your body always sends signals more accurate than any advice. Rebuilding trust in yourself does not come from learning more information. It comes from ending the small betrayals you have normalized. Betrayals that are not loud. Betrayals that happen when you nod, even though you want to refuse. When you smile, even though you are hurting. When you compromise, even though something inside tightens. When you stay silent in moments you were meant to speak. Each of these seemingly small actions makes your inner system send a quiet message. I am not trusted. And when that message repeats too many times, you begin living as if you are not capable of guiding yourself. To rebuild trust, you must begin with the smallest fragments, not big changes, not big leaps, but the small promises you keep with yourself. This is not just responsibility. This is an energetic commitment. When you keep promises to others, they trust you. When you keep promises to yourself, your soul trusts you. A sip of water when you said you would, 5 minutes of stillness when your body needs it, one honest sentence instead of pretending, one moment turning off the screen at the right time, one small boundary held firmly. These things are not grand, but they are powerful signals to the field. This is someone who can lead themselves. And when you emit that frequency, life begins to rearrange. Rebuilding trust also requires looking back at your past with kindness, not to excuse your mistakes, but to understand the structure behind your choices. There were times when you did not have enough data, times when you acted from fear, not because you were flawed, but because it was the only way to survive. Times when you listened to others because you believed that was the safer path. When you look back with compassion, you stop treating the past as evidence against you and begin seeing it as data for your growth. This matters because no trust can be built on punishment. The body and soul only cooperate with you when you stop using harshness as your internal authority. The next step in rebuilding trust is slowing your reflexes. Quick reflexes always belong to the old self. When someone asks for something and you instantly agree, when an opportunity appears and you instantly jump, when you feel pressured to answer immediately, these reflexes do not come from freedom, they come from history. When you slow the reflex, you give your true self time to speak. Just one deep breath before answering. One brief pause to feel whether the body contracts or opens. One small moment to ask yourself a single question: is this honest for me? This slowness is not procrastination, it is the reset of agency. When you begin deciding from your center, inner trust rises immediately. There will be moments when you get it wrong again. You agree too quickly, you choose the familiar instead of the right, you step off your axis. But the difference now is that you notice very fast. A sense of discomfort, a heaviness in the chest, a quiet voice in the mind. These signals do not come to judge you, they come to pull you back into alignment. Rebuilding trust does not require perfection. It requires noticing the misalignment and adjusting the moment you see it. The body will slowly understand that you are trying, not abandoning. The awareness will understand that you are re-choosing, not failing. The field will understand that you are entering the state where your decisions can be trusted. Throughout this process, you will notice a profound but subtle shift. You stop asking too many people about your choices. You stop seeking validation constantly. You stop depending on others' reactions to know whether you are right or wrong, not because you become stubborn, but because you are returning to the natural authority of the soul. When inner trust is rebuilt, doubt decreases, confusion decreases, inner noise decreases. You feel a new kind of quiet, not the quiet of resignation, the quiet of someone who knows they can stand on their own. And from this foundation, you act differently. You move slowly but surely. You speak less but truthfully. You choose fewer things but with depth. You adjust quickly but without panic. You listen inside more than outside. You no longer fear the future, no longer fear being wrong, no longer fear beginning again, because what you trust now is not circumstances, not other people, not probability. You trust yourself. This reconstruction marks the point where the field can begin sending stronger signals because your inner system is stable enough to receive them. And from here, every choice you make carries a different quality. No longer defensive, no longer based on scarcity, no longer rooted in escape. They become the choices of a soul that has returned to its axis, where trust is not something you try to have, it is something you naturally emit. You have begun returning to yourself. And from this place, everything in your life will be rewritten. Fear never enters your life in its true form. It rarely shows up as clear panic. Instead, it prefers to wear reasonable clothing. It disguises itself as caution, as the timing not being right, as the need for more preparation, as the need for more healing, as the need for more research, as the need for a perfect plan you never feel ready to start. The more sophisticated the fear, the more it looks like intelligence. And that is why you often follow it for years without naming it. Procrastination is not a discipline problem, as you once believed. It is a form of protection, an old mechanism of the nervous system when faced with something important enough to change you. Every time you are about to step into a new version of yourself, fear sends whispers that sound like logic. Not good enough, not the right time, not clear enough, not certain enough. Check again, wait for another sign. Wait for another intuitive hit. Wait for more time. Wait for one more day. One more day always becomes a week. A week becomes a month. A month becomes a season. And you do not realize that your life is being delayed, not because you are weak, but because you are being run by the old version of yourself. Fear in disguise always has the same purpose: to keep you safe in the old way, to keep you in the familiar zone even when it has drained you, to keep you away from what could help you grow, because growth requires facing the parts of yourself you once avoided. What you procrastinate is not the task, not the relationship, not the new direction. You procrastinate facing your real potential, because that potential is too big, too bright, too unlike the story you have been used to telling about yourself. Procrastination has a subtle marker. It does not make you calm. It makes you tired. It does not release energy. It drains energy. It does not make you lighter. It makes you heavy, as if you are carrying something you know you must do but refuse to touch. When you procrastinate, the field responds by closing all flow, not to punish you, but to keep you from wasting energy in the wrong direction. When you stay too long in fear, your timeline shifts into stillness. This is the quantum delay, the energetic delay. It is not karma. It is not an obstacle. It is simply the natural response of the field when your frequency no longer matches your actions. Quantum delay happens whenever you emit a desire, but your actions carry the opposite frequency. You say you want to rise, but you delay. You say you want to heal, but you avoid emotions. You say you want to change your job, but you cling to the old fear. You say you want love, but you lock your heart. The field does not read words. The field reads vibration. When vibration and action contradict each other, the timeline stands still until you realign. During this phase, you will see very clear signs. The body is always tired. Ideas do not flow. Intuition is unclear. Sleep feels heavy. The mind feels empty yet noisy. This is not natural stillness. This is being stuck in the loop of disguised fear. To break out of this state, you do not need a dramatic leap. You only need one very small step in the right direction. An action that does not need to be perfect, only honest. One email sent, one idea written down, one decision to stop, one decision not to compromise. One tiny movement is enough to dissolve the quantum delay, because a true step emits a frequency stronger than 1,000 doubts. The subtle truth is that fear in disguise is only powerful when you stand still. When you move even slightly, it loses its power instantly, because you are giving your nervous system new data, and that data says you do not die when you step forward. When the body and mind begin understanding that movement is not as dangerous as they once believed, you enter a state of frequency recalibration. You no longer act from pressure, you act from alignment. Once you take a few small steps, you will notice this truth. Fear does not disappear. It simply shrinks when you stop treating it as guidance. It may whisper, but you no longer hear it as a command. It may interfere, but you no longer let it decide your day. And that is the moment you rise above it. The most important point of this section is recognizing that procrastination is not a flaw. It is a signal of a doorway. That doorway does not open through grand courage. It opens through small but consistent movement. Not through perfection, but through honesty. Not through a leap, but through one correct step. When you enter enter this state, the field reads that you no longer worship fear, and in that moment, the quantum delay dissolves. Your timeline begins moving again. Opportunities appear. Ideas return. Synchronicities re-arise. You feel life shifting upward in a subtle but undeniable way. This is the signal that fear is no longer leading you. You are leading yourself. And from that moment, you no longer slow down because of fear in disguise. You move at the speed of the soul. And that speed is always precise. The unique mission that holds your energetic fingerprint is not a title you must strive for, nor a glamorous role you must chase. It is something you carried the moment you entered this life. A specific frequency that can only express itself through you, through the way you feel, the way you observe, the way you touch the world, and the way the world responds to you. No one else can replace, copy, or reenact it with the same original vibration. Every soul carries memories, an energetic imprint, a field of awareness that makes them sensitive to certain things more than others. Some are sensitive to pain, some to injustice, some to beauty, some to truth, some to the movement of the soul. These sensitivities are not personality traits, they are maps. When you are not awake, they make you feel different. When you open your eyes, you realize they are indicators of your mission. A mission does not come from the outside. It reveals itself when you look deeply enough into yourself and see that there are things you simply cannot not do, not because of responsibility, but because your soul naturally gravitates toward them like a stream of energy. There are topics you can think about for hours without getting tired. There are problems you solve quickly while others struggle. There are conversations that light you up instead of draining you. There are actions that strengthen your spirit instead of pulling you down. These are the places where your mission frequency is already operating, even if you have not named it. If you look back at your past, you will see a clear thread running through every stage of your life. Not your jobs, not your achievements, but the moments when you accidentally hit the exact point your soul was programmed to serve. Maybe it was the moment you comforted someone with just one simple sentence that shifted their entire state. Maybe it was when you told a story that opened a new awareness in someone listening. Maybe it was when you stood up for what was right, even when no one stood with you. Maybe it was when you created something no one asked you to make, but it made others feel seen. Those moments were not random. They were echoes of your mission. Your unique mission has nothing to do with titles, nothing to do with careers, nothing to do with becoming a certain kind of figure. Your mission is about transmission. It does not ask what you do. It asks what you transmit when you do it. Two people can do the same job. One turns it into a mission. The other treats it as a task. The difference lies in frequency. The more you live aligned with your frequency, the clearer your mission becomes. The further you live from it, the dimmer it appears. When you live out of alignment with your essence, life becomes heavy. When you live aligned with your essence, life becomes light. And that lightness does not come from circumstances, but from the alignment between you and your path. Your unique mission is also hidden within your deepest wounds. The wounds that made you sensitive to a particular form of pain are the exact places where you were given the ability to heal others without effort. Not by technique, by presence. Every time you break out of an old cycle, your energy becomes re-encoded. And those codes are what you carry into life to support the souls walking a few steps behind you. You do not teach them. You simply live truthfully, and that truth transmits on its own. A mission never asks you to be perfect. It only asks you to be precise. Precise with yourself, precise with your feeling, precise with what makes you alive. When you stop forcing yourself into someone else's mold, your energy is released and the mission begins shaping itself. You stop searching for answers. You become the answer. When you stand in your frequency, aligned doors appear. Not because of luck, not because of chance, but because the field responds instantly to someone standing in their true axis. Your mission never gets lost, only you do. And when you return to the fundamental honesty of your soul, everything begins rearranging. The right people appear, the right conversations appear, the right opportunities appear. Not to change your life overnight, but to pull you deeper into the energetic field that only you can emit. The unique mission with the energetic fingerprint is the one thing no one can compete with. No one can take it. No one can do it better than you, because it is not about what you do. It is about the vibration. And that vibration has only one owner, you. When you enter this part of the journey, you stop asking what your life should do. You begin asking a different question. What aligns with my frequency? That frequency leads you exactly where you belong. And that place is the intersection between your soul and the unique mission you were born to bring into this world. You stop searching. You begin becoming. When you reach the stage of becoming the signal, life no longer revolves around searching for signs, seeking guidance, or looking for confirmation. Those things are only necessary when your inner energetic system is still misaligned, when you still need external feedback to know where you stand. But once you have passed through darkness, moved through collapse, recalibrated your frequency, cleared the noise, reclaimed your energy, and found the mission that carries your unique fingerprint, what comes next is the greatest shift. You no longer search for the signal, you become the signal. Becoming the signal has nothing to do with perfection. It has everything to do with transparency. When you no longer live through disguises, no longer fold yourself into old stories, no longer dissolve into the expectations of others, your true frequency begins to broadcast clearly. A signal does not broadcast through loud words or forceful actions. It broadcasts through states of being. A person standing in their truth does not need to try to be noticed. Their presence automatically shifts the density of space. Others feel it even if they cannot explain it. This signal is not something you create through effort. It is the natural consequence of living in alignment. When you no longer betray yourself, your energy becomes sharp. When you keep small promises to yourself, the field reads you as a stable source of frequency. When you say what is true and stay silent when silence is true, you emit coherence. When you choose boundaries from love rather than fear, you emit steadiness. When you do not compare, do not chase the rhythm of others, and do not get entangled in noise, you emit clarity. These elements combine into a signal the field cannot ignore. The signal identity is not a new identity, it is a deeper version of you, one that is no longer pulled into stories you have already outgrown. This is when you notice life responding to you quickly. The right people appear at the right time, the right opportunities find you, doors once closed open gently. Not because you are lucky, but because you are broadcasting the precise frequency of what belongs to you. When you become the signal, you no longer fear being left behind. You no longer worry that you are slower than someone else. You no longer try to compete for attention. You no longer need to prove your worth. Your presence itself is evidence. People may not understand you, but they cannot deny the clarity they feel when standing near you. You become quiet but powerful, still but sharp, simple but profound, not loud but unmistakable. One of the signs you have touched the signal identity is the strange stillness that begins to surround your decisions. You are no longer rushing, no longer clinging, no longer controlled by panic. You choose slowly but accurately. You speak less but hit the center. You act less but precisely. What you do carries weight because it no longer comes from fear or scarcity, but from the steadiness of the soul. A person who has become the signal does not chase the future. They create the future through the frequency they hold in the present. Reality begins rearranging itself around you. What does not belong to you leaves without conflict. What is right for you moves towards you as if pulled by gravity. You no longer search for miracles. You become the point where miracles happen. What is interesting is that at this stage, you do not feel like you are at your peak. You simply feel you are in the right place, at the right rhythm, at the right layer. You feel light, but not drifting, strong, but not tense, free, but not lost. Everything seems to assemble itself by an invisible but precise force. This is when you realize the deepest truth. The signal was never outside. It was always within you. You only needed time to clear enough noise, heal enough wounds, recall enough of yourself, and steady your axis enough to hear it clearly. When you become the signal, you no longer ask whether the field can hear you. You know the field moves according to you. A single word you speak carries weight. A decision you make shifts the flow. A state you hold opens a door. This is no longer a journey of trying to keep up. This is a journey you lead with the maturity of your soul. And you arrived here through everything you survived. At the end of this whole journey, I want you to pause for a moment. Look at yourself. Look at the person who did not give up, who walked through the dark, who chose truth, who reconnected with the soul, who realigned the energetic axis, who rebuilt trust, who rediscovered the mission, and who now stands at the threshold of becoming the signal. You did not get here by chance. You became the version the field can trust enough to send stronger signals. And finally, as a blessing to the souls walking with Quantum Vault, I want you to carry this. May you walk forward with the clarity of someone who finally sees themselves. May you act with the calm of someone who no longer feels lost. May you love yourself with the respect of someone who understands the value of their own light. And may every step you take broadcast clearly that you have become the source of your own life. May life respond to you with the exact frequency you have protected. May the field open paths for you in the gentlest and most precise ways. I wish you to continue as a signal of light in this world. I wish you not only to find your path, but to become that path for yourself. And I wish you always remember, you are no longer walking alone. The field is walking with you.